We're going to get started. So my name is Rob Floyd, and I'm joined by my colleague Rob Passarella. We're from a company called DataSift, and we are going to talk to you a little bit about social media and social data. So as most of you probably are aware, social data is very, very large. When you look at Twitter, you're over 400 million tweets a day now, and the Super Bowl is over 1 billion tweets. And there's over 100 million public posts a day from Facebook. We're aggregating all that data and we're making it available commercially and to social tech companies, and we're powering a lot of applications in the social data sphere. Okay. So, but what you probably don't know is that a tweet is more than just 140 characters. So when you're actually sending out a tweet, there's upwards of 100 columns of metadata that go along with that. Everything from if you filled out a profile when you joined and said, I live in New York City, or maybe you self-identified as New York, how many followers you have, what language you're speaking. So all this metadata is available, and hence through our platform available to mine and to search on as you're looking for information. It's kind of like the world's largest focus group that's running 24/7. And there's three things that we do in our platform. The first is we aggregate multiple data streams, so both Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Reddit, Bitly, and a number of other social data sources. So we take all these massive unstructured data sources and consolidate them onto our platform. We enrich that data. We add gender, clout score, sentiment, links. We can uncompress links. We do a lot of other stuff around the data itself. And then finally, we filter or have a filtration capability, which is what Rob's going to show you today as well, and how you can actually look for the information in the tweets you want to see. So there's going to be an audience participation. So at following the initial demo, make note of this, the hashtag New York Meetup. It's a little bit different than what John had established, but so hashtag New York Meetup, and when we say so get your Twitter ready. You can tweet. We're going to just show you the real-time nature of the platform itself. So with that, Rob?
Okay, just dock me up. Let's see, let's pull up just expand this. Just get ready. So what I'd like to show you is just very much, if you think about DataSift, our name actually tells you what we do. We sift through data on the internet, right? For social media and other sources. You could do it in two ways. So there's a lot of I would hope, very geeky people in this who don't maybe want to self-identify as geeky people, but I am definitely a geek these days. I could show you two ways. One is actually a more WYSIWYG type of interface that anybody can use to create a simple filter, and then we can actually get into a code-based one, which is actually built in a language we created called CSDL. So I'll create a very simple stream, or in this case a filter. We'll just call it test, something very popular like Apple. If you notice here, you'll see there's a visual query builder that we have, as well as a code editor. I'm going to use the visual query builder, and I'm going to basically create a very simplistic filter, and then I'll show you what you can do later, make it more complex. So let's do something in a sense of fast fingers, let's create a filter. Let's try to use all the content that we have here in DataSift. We'll do that, and we'll do something where we're going to look for anything that says Apple, iPad, let's see, iPhone. Tim Cook might be good since he spoke today. And we'll just save this and we'll preview it. And we're going to basically look for, within all the tweets in real time, any one of those terms that comes up. So any of those terms that come up should satisfy the filter. I'm just going to preview this, and let's see what happens. Since we're on the internet, you never know what's going to happen and what's going to come up. And I'll just stop right here, and you can see that we've got just a very simple set of data that's come through. In fact, we're getting about 4 interactions per second.
Let it go, get a few.
We'll get a few more, but I just want to show you what you can actually do. The stream I'll get to run again. You can see how fast this is going. I got about 40 interactions. Apple is extremely popular when it comes to social media. All right. So, that's a good one to stop on right here, I'm sure. This is what happens when you go on the internet and you fly without a net. So I'll just go something like this. You'll see this little bug that comes up, this debug here. If I click on that, Rob was talking about earlier, it's always good to do a demo with two guys named Rob. Because when you said Rob said that, did they say that? So if you can take a look here, these are the fields that are actually contained within a tweet. So you can see we have demographic information, is that we believe this is somebody who's female who wrote this. We do that in different ways by looking at the languages associated, the name. We have basically a dictionary of names that we can correlate in certain time zones as well as regions. You can look at other stuff. This is about the author in this case, and all this is actually on the tweet that we process. Here's a cloud score you can look at. This is encoded in English, and we're about 100% positive it's English. And then there's all the metadata around links that are here, so that you can see any one of these fields we can actually use to create another query. So if we wanted to create something that actually said for links existing, in this case we would only look at that. In fact, you know what? I'll be very dangerous in that sense, and I'll show you some other tweets. This is also a retweet. So you can get very complex with these filters. You can go very easy. Let me go in here and actually pull another stream, which is a little bit more complex, that I'll edit. This is one of the Apple filters I created where I'm looking for specific things. If you notice, in there I have a thing called tagging. I can actually tag data on the fly and use that as basically my own way of wanting to count objects. So in this case, I can tag, this is actually Apple. It's looking for Apple in a couple different structures. In fact, I'm looking for anybody who identifies themselves in their user profile as an analyst, as a trader, as a broker. They may have said, I worked at some place and I was a broker. I happen to be a trader. I'm an analyst at a firm. If they use any of the terms you see here for journalist, I have, if somebody says in their profile, their Twitter user description, that they're a journalist, an editor, a reporter, or an anchor, I will find that and actually use that and tag that. And then the last piece here is anybody who's using a ticker symbol within the tweet itself, or in the substring is what I'm saying of the tweet, I can also tag so that I know that they probably have a financial bent and they've used a ticker as well. And then I'm searching for very specific things. If you look in here, this is the meat really of what I'm doing, which is I'm saying anytime a piece of Twitter text comes across that has Apple in it as a string, any of these terms in it, or specifically, I'm looking where it says links domain. I'm looking for really articles. So if they've linked to the Wall Street Journal, to Bloomberg.com, Reuters.com, I'm only sifting for those things. And then, of course, I really want just English stuff. So I'm going to close this and run this, and you'll see the difference now when you run. This might be a little bit slower, but you'll see a lot more of the metadata tags, and I'll explore that. So just give it a while to kick up. It's got to think. Here we go. And as you can see now, you're starting to see metadata tags that are here, like TechCrunch. This guy's a top talker, so in this case, he has over 5,000 followers and 10,000 statuses. I can really home in and drill on what I want, which is the case what happens. I don't know if you're familiar. Does anybody here use social media data and pull it in today? All right, if you do not set your keyword filters appropriately on some other services, you get a lot of garbage. That is a normal thing that happens in filtering on social media. So the filtering language and being able to use more than just keywords. So we have some very interesting structures. We have negation. I can say, give me this and not that in a search, so I can really get down to what I want. I can say, only give me people who have a certain criteria, a cloud score, a certain set of statuses, a certain set of followers. Show me only people from a region who identify with a location, a geolocation. So those are the kind of things you can really do to map the data that you want, instead of getting, everybody who's talking about a broken iPod. Maybe you don't want that right now. Maybe you're not doing a consumer type of query where you would want to see broken iPods where they are across the country. But anytime you look at this data, what you're trying to do is figure out as a purpose. So this is one way to look at it. This is our sort of our preview pane. What you can do with that is quite a few things. One is you can now take these streams, and let me just go back to the Apple example, and I can do other things with it. So if you see here, this is my Apple stream now, and I can preview, which is what I've been doing. I can consume this via an API call, which means I have everything here to create this into an application and make an API call to a REST API in DataSift and pull that data in as a JSON object and basically use that directly either in a script in real time, or I can actually go back and instead I can record the stream today, which means if I wanted to record the stream, I have a setup now. I can record this from now until some other point in time. I can download the data later, and I'll show you, I have various data destinations I can go to. Or my favorite is I can run a historic query, which means I can do a couple things. I can go back in time. We have about 3+ years worth of data from Twitter. In this case that we have, we're one of the licensed, authorized licensees of basically Twitter data where you can get the tweets. And I can do a couple things. Is I can say, in the case of Apple, if I wanted to get 100%, that's a lot of data, I can do basically sampling. So I can say, just give me 10% of basically what's going on at the host at that point where Apple tweets are there. And then if I actually continue to do this and set this up, I didn't put an end date, sorry. So let's do this up to the 10th. So if I did this and I wanted to set this up, I can start this task, and you'll see it tells me exactly what it's going to do, how long the slicing. But the cool thing is that we can send this to multiple locations. So you could actually have it go to any one of these if you have an account there, and actually have the file delivered on a periodic basis, whether it be by time or actually by megabyte that you want. So you can pick it up. You never have to worry about the fact that you're always getting data or waiting for data live. The data can actually queue up in your FTP host or your S3 or wherever you want, and you can pull that down. So how much time do we have? 5 minutes? Good. We'll do the audience participation part since you enjoyed so much the Apple tweets that are coming through. So what I did was I just created a very simplistic filter here. I'll show it to you. What I'm doing is saying if Twitter text contains this hashtag, is just display it. So the hashtag you're going to do when I tell you to is pound NY Meetup. And if we do this correctly, we'll show you. The idea here is that we're processing data in real time. So we process probably and add lots of augmentations, but that Rob talked about before, cloud and other things, in about 500 milliseconds. So if this works out, please start tweeting pound New York Meetup and we'll see what happens. Oh, wow. Hey, here we go. So if you're tweeting in the room, this is what happens. You can be humorous if you like. That's the fun part of this. Who are your customers? That's a good one. You're asking questions in a tweet. That's good. We'll let Rob handle some of those questions. I'll tell you every one of our customers probably. We could go into that. I mean, we could let this run and you can ask questions. We can have some fun.
Yeah, we can open up for questions. I think you're about done with.
Yeah, this is it. We want to make it pretty much interactive, so you get the gist here. You can basically do this not only for social media data. We have other data sources like NewsCred is also another provider that you can get in this case, and they actually collect stories from basically third-party providers that are out there. I think they have about 3,000 sources, so they're gathering data from people have RSS feeds, major publications, and they're re-syndicating that.
So we'll take that first one. Who are our customers? We have two types of customers. So most of the social tech companies that are powered by a social data stream, like you take Social Guide or Music Metrics or NetBase or any of those classic companies are powered by us or one or two other companies, and then enterprise customers. And so we are only a year old. Last year we acquired 100 customers. We're going to do double that this year. But it's major names like Oracle and Dow Jones, Bloomberg, New York Times, many other large enterprises, Lockheed Martin. And so I think the power of this is now, how can you take enterprise data and enrich that with social data? That's the real opportunity for large companies to learn more about your customers.
Nice. Somebody wants to know when we're sponsoring an after party. I enjoy that. There was a question about who our VCs are. So IA Ventures here in New York, if you're familiar with IA Ventures, that's Roger Ehrenberg. There's also Scale, which is Rory O'Driscoll, who just recently came on. We did our last round. And before that, I think it was Mark Schuster at GPR. Right. Yes?
How are you different to some of the other social monitoring tools out there? I don't know, Radiant 6 or the like.
So we're not a monitoring tool at all. We're simply providing the data. So the filtration gives you the information that you're most interested in. And there's a charge, Twitter charges for the data. So it's very, very important to be able to really refine in exactly what you're looking for. So we would power, so NetBase is comparable to Radiant 6, that's a monitoring tool. We power about half of the listening and monitoring platforms that are out there.
Somebody asked me a question about a use case. I'll give you a use case. My background is finance. I spent a lot of time in equity research. I was actually at Morgan Stanley years ago when they still, used, I would say, desktop computers. It seems they've gotten off that, and everybody has an iPad these days. Perfect use case is I worked with a hedge fund client recently. wanted to look at branding, especially when it came to consumer product companies and what they were doing, and wanted to get an idea about demographics and compare say, competitors to a product. So take a product company, maybe they wanted to see within a demographic group on Twitter if it was waxing or waning. For example, we have a partner that we use that does our demographics, which is called SHMAP, so you can see age group ranges as well as locales. So imagine, if you will, you're buying or you're comparing maybe 4 different types of products that are out there, and you happen to notice that one product, who's your leading guy that you have a big investment in, seems to hold a bigger sway with an age group that you see as the early entry to a pipeline. You would want to know if there's an inflection point or potential inflection point that could happen. So that's a use case in finance. You would look at those age groups, you can go back in time, you can map out the demographics, and then you can say, whoa, they used to actually own 17 to 21-year-olds, and that would go down a pipeline. It looks like this other guy who's a competitor now really owns 17 to 21-year-olds in a conversation. That's in one way. Another way is, we just had a case which we thought was funny, is, did anybody remember about audience.com? Does anybody here know those guys? There was a bogus tweet about them, is that Muddy Waters actually put out a bogus, or put out a sell side saying research report, they're being investigated by the DOJ. That kind of knocked the stock about 20% that day. That was a tweet. We actually looked at the data around that tweet, which was pretty cool. Is that it turned out the account was set up 4 days, usually 4 days before the tweet came out. They tweeted once before in that case, but it got picked up by a lot of people on the second time out. So clearly, I would say a regulator would want to look at that and know those things. And that's the type of things that we can track. We can go down at that level.
Other questions? Yes.
I think I missed it at the beginning, but what data sources can you ingest, and are you going to try and be as comprehensive as possible, or you're just going to?
So I just put up a list. We can basically ingest anything. We run a very large Hadoop cluster, which does most of the historics, but we process everything in real time. In that sense, from I would say, is you can have to think about it. Anything that we can take in, ingest, and format, we can make retrievable. So you can see here we've got, there are two types of things here. We call them, there are data sources and augmentations. Demographics is an augmentation that we add on the real-time processing side, but then we have blogs, message boards, video that we get in, Facebook, the public page side, we can do IMDb, we get Amazon, the comments pieces, so if you wanted to, just another thing, do channel checking on comments of products, what people think, and write your own. We also do real-time sentiment analytics. So our partner is Lexalytics. It's one of the only ones that actually can do real-time analytics in sub-second for us. So we have to look at these because we're processing things real-time.
We're looking at things like Foursquare, Yelp.
Yep.
We look at them all. There are different ways to get it. I would say is some of them are still cul-de-sac-y, right? Is they don't want to let that data out yet. So the minute that they start doing that, it'll make it easier. Or relations we make. We have we can't announce it yet, but we have somebody who's in that vein that we're working with right now.
Do you have a question? Another question?
That was a similar question.
Okay.
But are you doing anything special maybe around like video and pictures, given the prevalence of visuals over textual-based information?
I think it's definitely something we're exploring right now and taking a look. It's a little bit harder because of what we would have to do, right? We're geared towards one aspect. It's not to say we wouldn't do the other. It's just another area we'd have to delve into. Right now, it's really funny. I started doing web stuff in '94, early on, and we joked about it that the killer app was text. It's still text. Right? Although we've got pictures now, the killer app on basically social media is text. I don't know. There's more Facebook traffic and Twitter traffic that seems of text-oriented nature than pictures. Although they do share a lot of photos.
Yeah. Yes.
So it seems, I guess, you're probably paying royalties upstream to your data providers, and you're providing a value add. So how do you provide predictable pricing to people using your services? So it's not like you run a query and bam, something goes. I saw this DPU thing. I didn't know how that factors that into.
Sure, great question. 2 components. There's a platform fee, and that gives you all of the access to the data, single API, and the filtration capability. And then there's whatever data and enrichment charges. So that's a variable component. It depends on what you're searching for. If you're a credit card company and you're looking for people talking about, travel, there might be 1 million interactions that are out there. So, it's all based on what your use case is. Some of the data providers don't charge. Facebook is free. Twitter charges 10 cents per 1,000. So that's $100 for 1 million interactions.
I think what's nice about what we do is that actually, I'm going to pull it up, our pricing,
pull it up.
I will pull it up.
Go ahead.
We're
Yeah.
pretty transparent in pricing. You can pretty much know what you're going to pay for.
You had a couple of video sources up there. You guys in real time take video to text as well?
No, what we're doing, like YouTube, for example, it's the commentary that's going into the YouTube. We're capturing that, not whatever's being spoken in the video itself.
I think one of the other things, just back on that note, is that link interrogation is one of the key things, is being able to actually, we unpack the links. We have a service to do that. So when you have a shortened link, we'll go down and actually get the title as well as the URL, the actual real URL. Those can be queried as well. So if you wanted to look for, say, stories, in a sense where it could be URL pathing or actually in the title of a document, you can do that too, so you can search at that level and not just the tweet itself.
Yeah.
Do I
One more.
pay per tweet you process, or do I pay per tweet I see?
You pay per tweet you consume. So you can process against the full fire hose. If you're only pulling down 10,000 interactions, you only pay for the ones you're consuming. That's the power of our platform, is the filtration capability. So that's all the time we have. Just one last comment, and that would be, if you're not a Twitter user, you don't have to actually tweet to be a Twitter user. Most people, or half the consumers, actually just receive information. So it's a great way to get news and get information as well. You should get on Twitter if you're not. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.